Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the DCI part number 805. This is a top self-latching flush bolt for a metal door in a US10 or 612 finish. This is a top flush bolt only. Here's the business end of the flush bolt. Okay. An 805 is a top only. You wouldn't use it at the bottom because it's a self-latching bolt. And it is, every time the inactive door is closed, it's going to be latched every single time. The only way to unlatch the top door is to push the nickel-sized button here, which will retract the latch. That is here. It's a typical flush bolt, quarter 20 thread. It's going to be a 12-inch size, and that's a reference to the top of the door to the center of the faceplate. So the door is closed. I open the active door. I want to get the inactive open. I push that, and it brings it down. Okay. To go along with this is naturally going to be a strike plate, and this is a US10 installation. So we're looking at satin bronze. It's proper to call it 612. Because that tells us that it's not only made of bronze with a satin finish, it's got some lacquer on it as well. When they say US10, you do not know what the base material is. That's inherent in the old original US system of finish designations. You don't know what the base material is. It would be, if this was made of steel, it would be appropriate to call it 639. That would be the BHMA number. 639 is 612. They're both satin bronze. 612 means bronze base material. 639 means steel base material. This strike is definitely made of bronze. Okay, as is the faceplate. That's the back side of it. It's obviously going to look like this. And of course, DCI will be able to supply these to you in all of the architectural finishes that you would require. Really good look there. A very petite visual indication that this is UL listed and obviously labeled, which would be what is required for installation on fire-rated doors. Certainly where you're going to see this type of bolt installed on a fire-rated opening. Pairs of doors. Fire-rated doors have to be self-closing and self-latching. If you have an inactive door in a pair of doors that is not self-latching, you don't have a fire door. There is one type of application for pairs of doors where the inactive door can be a manual bolt, but that's generally seen only in, that is exclusively seen only in places like electrical closets on floors of condo buildings where there's no human occupancy on the inside. They'll permit that inactive door to be mechanically, manually bolted closed with a closing device and a latching device on the active door. But in all other instances, you need to have both doors closing and latching, is the bottom line. Now, it would be very typical to see the 805 installed with an automatic flush bolt at the bottom. An automatic flush bolt would be inherently different than a self-latching flush bolt because it would have a trigger. It would actually be upside down naturally. It would have a trigger up here so that every time the active door was closed, that trigger would be depressed and the bolt would be engaged into the sill. You could easily use a self-latching at the top and an automatic flush bolt at the bottom to give you that sort of compliance that you need. The advantage of that system is when the active door is open, the inactive is still latched. Still in the latched position, it won't just open. So every time that you close the door, you're bolted top and bottom. Every time you open the door, you're bolted at the top until you need to release that top bolt. And all you do is just reach up and push your finger in the plunger. Okay. Now we've talked about the application. Let's get into what the 805 is. There is a link below this video to a document called Product Information 2019 version. That's what I'm looking at. And you'll see on that one-page document the 805 itself, and it will give you an overview of basically how it functions. Some other features of it, that it is listed It does have a override feature. Where if there was a problem with it latching into the header, maybe there was a severe misalignment, this spring here is going to govern the fact that it will simply retract without damaging the rest of the unit. So that's the override feature. Low closing force just basically means that any sort of door closer that you'll have will overcome the amount of pressure it takes to depress that to get the door to be latched. Obviously, that's paramount. Adjustable bolt head rods. Yeah, sure. You can just thread that in and out, to tailor the exact height. That's 1/4-20. Now, you might say, well, that's great if I've got a 7-foot door. I just talked to a client maybe yesterday or the day before who I said, well, use an 805 at the top and then use an 840 at the bottom. He's like, well, my doors are 8 foot tall. Okay, no problem. Just we're going to add a piece of threaded rod from DCI to lengthen the top dimension so that you don't need a step stool to reach that button. Now, this is specifically a metal door set, and there is a reference to the 905 and the 940. Those are wood door sets. There's a huge difference. You can just visually see that they're different, although their functionality is really identical. The product information 2009 version, it's really just a rehash of the same information. Before we get to the template, which acts as the installation instructions, let's go over the information down below in the extended description. That is going to be top self-latching flush bolt UL listed for metal doors. Patented, non-handed, free-floating cam. Easy operation to retract self-latching bolt. Minimal force to activate the bolt. Manufactured with an override feature to prevent damage to the door or the bolt. Positive high-temperature latch. Engineered to function in high-frequency areas with minimum maintenance. Trim packages are available to reduce inventory levels. What that means is DCI is going to have a bushel load of these, and then they're just going to have, 100 of each trim set. They'll have 300 of these, but then be able to do the trim sets separately. And that's what kind of makes it a low inventory model. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of getting one of these installed. That link is called template. That is also going to be included with your paperwork. The bottom line is this. If you are installing this item onto a door that's already prepped for a flush bolt, not really much to talk about, except you want to make sure that you have a guide installed up in the top of the door, because that guide is going to be required to keep the bolt from turning on you. And it will turn on you. It'll turn on you quick. So in this perspective, if I've got a right-hand reverse inactive door, I need to make sure that this is installed up into the top of the door so that that bolt doesn't turn on you. It can't rotate at all. Otherwise, it'll come disengaged, is the bottom line. And I have customers who will call and say, hey, my flush bolt head just fell into the door. And then it's been prepped the door has been made by somebody who didn't make a square or a D-shaped profile to keep that bolt from turning on us. We don't want it to rotate. We want it to stay right in place. Okay? Just like that. That's the first thing you're going to do if you're just working on. And then at that point, you've got the top guide installed, or you need to install it. It's really nothing other than a process of taking this, thread it down to the body, get it down reasonably well, then through the edge of the door, literally fish this up and in. Get this into the door, bring it up, and you'll get it in. Or alternatively, you could not have the plate on. You could bring this down and then try to thread it that way, but that's a bit of a challenge. I usually will just try to force it in, although sometimes it makes it, depending on the design, you don't have enough room down here to get the whole gizmo in. You don't want to bend this rod at all. So one way or another, you'll have to get it in, either assembled or remove this so that you can thread it all like that. At that point, finish up whatever installation you have with the 4 screws, and the screws are certainly included. And one thing I love about DCI, screws are in a bag, strike plates in a bag. Faceplate's in a bag. It's all separated. These items can't touch each other and scratch each other in transportation, storage, things of that nature. So you'll get that unit installed. The only downside is you might need to remove it and then adjust how far that's threaded in, because it might be sticking out too far and not fully retracting, or it might not be sticking out enough. So be mindful of that. You're going to want to test the operation before you close the door so you don't have to try to get that open, which won't be the end of the world, but you don't want to do it. Assuming this is a fire-rated door, you wouldn't be doing any sort of field preparation at all, assuming that you're not someone who's been authorized, et cetera, to do that kind of work. However, moving forward, if you're going to prep the door for this material, it's intended for metal doors. They can be made to work on wood doors, even though they wouldn't technically be fire-rated for a wood door application. Mortising these for a wood door is possible. It's not typical and should be avoided when it can be. It's not the right bolt to use for a fire. It's the wrong bolt to use for a fire-rated wood door application. It's not the right bolt to use for a wood door. Now, having said that, if you need to put this onto a wood door, let me know, and I can discuss with you how to do it. But it would be a non-fire-rated door naturally. And it just requires machining the wood door for it, which is not an easy task. If you've got a wood door, go with the 905, 940 series. Now, if you're going to prep this in a metal door and it's fire-rated, you have to be listed and licensed and things of that nature. But in essence, all you're really doing is creating a 6 3/4 tall prep in the edge of the door by 1 inch wide. That's it. The top of the door to the center line of this plate needs to be 12 inch. Top of the door to the center of the 6 3/4 is 12 inch. That's it. Make that preparation. You're going to need some mounting tabs, either that you manufacture or that you purchase. We sell steel mounting tabs for these that have an offset to them, that have 2 holes drilled and tapped for what I would imagine to be the 832 screws that are in here. They're obviously combination screws. You'll get a total of 6 finished screws, because you'll need 4 for the faceplate and then 2 for the T-strike. You can see why we call it a T-strike. We'll go over those dimensions in a moment. The guide has 2 just typical zinc colored screws, combination as well, which means wood thread via machine thread. I've used die grinders, I've used jigsaws, I've had the factory make them, etc. If you're going to do it yourself and it's non-fire rated, you've got to do that. Then you've got to prep the top of the door for the guide. Depending on the construction, you could have an inverted top channel where you'd install it this way. You could need to be able to prep out that entire door and give yourself a mounting plate underneath, and then just make that flush to the top of the door. Depending on the construction of the door is how you'll flush. Inverted is how you'll install that. The rest of the template, looking at it, the dimensions of the strike, this is going to be 2 3/4. That's a typical T-strike installation, 2 3/4. The overall width of the strike is about 1 7/8 inches. Strikes are measured from the center line of the screw hole to the edge of the lip, and this is about 1 3/8 inches. That's a typical size for strikes, is just the bottom line. You're going to need to locate that at the proper dimension up in the header is the bottom line, so that you've got a center line of your bolt to make contact with your strike. You're going to need to figure out, and you can from the template, what is the dimension of no, I guess you can't determine it from the template because they don't give that dimension. Where you're going to mount this into the edge of the door is going to be based on the 3/8 dimension from the edge of the door to where this plate starts. That's okay, but they don't really give you a center line of this. That's going to be basically understood as 3/4 inch. So that should be center line to the edge of 3/8 of an inch. And I'm getting the 3/4 from the edge of the door to the vertical center line of the bolt at 3/4 inch. Yeah, that'd be spot on. Edge of the plate to the center of the hole would be 3/8. That would give you 3/8, plus then 3/8 will give you 3/4 inch. The second best friend of the woodworker, right after the router, is the caliper, and you'll find that having a caliper when you're laying out material for fabrication is completely irreplaceable. So now you know where that plate's going to be mounted. You've got a dimension there. 12 inch as called out, you know, it's all secondary at that point. You might be able to install this with a 8BFB, that's a bottom fire bolt, where you do not have a flush bolt at the bottom of the doors. You've got the constant latching, the self-latching at the top. No bolt at the bottom, but there's a fire bolt. And what that basically has is a fusible apparatus to it by which, at a certain temperature, once that's hit, and it's well beyond where someone would be standing at the door, no one would be present at the door when the temperature hit to fire that bolt out. A bolt is going to launch out of the edge of the the inactive door into and pierce through a plug in the active door, securing the two doors together at the bottom. Completely approved method of installing a bolt at the top only with a fire bolt at the bottom. Okay. Now, finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all the DCI products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm quite partial to DCI, and it's because they're no nonsense. They've got a really great quality product. They ship it out super quick. They're almost never out of stock, and I can't think of the time that they were out of stock of something. And they're very happy to help every single time that they can. The person that you call and speak to on the phone is generally the person who enters the order, and unless it's a severely technical question, that person will be answering that question. Makes things nice and easy when you are working with a trim and auxiliary hardware manufacturer. Okay. They have a relatively petite footprint within the industry, and if you look through their catalog, you'll kind of see that. But they do a great job at all the material that they have, and as a result, I would encourage you to review their product line. You might be buying roller latches and flush bolts from other people, but you might want to take a look at DCI because the quality will be at least as good, if not better, and will be it'll be measurably less expensive. It'll be in stock, ready to ship, and while they do have a minimum order, like most companies do, it's not hard to exceed the minimum order when you order a set of automatic flush bolts. Any questions on the DCI 805 and a US10 finish or any other DCI product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.